Okay, so welcome to week 2. Welcome guys to the second week and the second module of our project management professional training program. So this is the module 2. I really want to congratulate you guys for going through and completing the module 1, which is the week 1. All through that module we were talking about introduction to project management and the PMI framework. So went through a whole lot of section, I think about 10 to 12 section or thereabouts, and at the end of the module you went through the quiz. So I want to congratulate all those of you who have gone through the quiz. I hope you're learning and you're making progress. So today we're going to be jumping right into the module 2 and week 2 of a PMP program, and I'm glad that you're gaining ground and learning a lot about project management and how to become an efficient and effective project manager in any organization you find yourself with, any project that you are given. Okay, and also I'm glad that you're also getting yourself prepped up for the PMI exam whenever you're ready to take that. Alright, this training program is loaded to give you everything that you need both to become an astute project manager and to be able to smash the PMI exams. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump right into the meat of the matter. In this week we're going to be talking about the environment in which projects operate. So projects, like every type of work, doesn't operate in a vacuum. All right, it operates within an environment. So in this model we're going to be looking at all the components, all the systems, all the agents, all right, that are present within the project management environment, and how all these things, how all the systems and tools and factors influence how your projects turn out at the end of the day. Okay, so let's move right on and see how we roll. Okay, so the section 1 is the overview. So let's look at an overview of this particular week. Welcome to week 2 of our project management training. In this week's module we'll explore the environment in which projects operate. Understanding the project's contexts and the factors that influence it is essential for successful project management. Like I said, you need to understand the contexts and the factors that influence your project if you really want to have a successful project as a project manager. So let's dive in, guys. Alright, so in this week's model, like I said, we'll be focusing on understanding the environment in which our projects operate. Alright, I already said you do not work in a vacuum as a project manager. You have to understand this. Alright, you operate within an environment, so you have to be conversant of the factors that influence your project and even influence you, your decision making, your resource allocation within that environment. Alright, so the project environment includes both internal and external factors that impact its execution, success and outcome. Right? So we'll be exploring the influence of enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets on our project. Alright? You don't know about enterprise environmental factors or organizational process asset, don't worry, I got you covered. Alright, so let's move right in. So what are the key learning objectives in this particular section. So by the end of this module, we'll be able to describe the concept of enterprise environmental factors and their significance in project management. So that's what we're going to be learning in this particular module, in this particular week. All right, enterprise environmental factors, which we call EEFs, okay, and what their significance is on our project management. All right, so we'll also be explaining the role of organizational process assets in shaping your project management practices. Okay, so let's jump right in, people. Now let's look at the course outline. All right, just done the overview, and then next we'll be looking at enterprise environmental factors, internal and external to the environment, as those within the project environment and those outside of the project environment, and how they all influence the project. We'll also be looking at organizational process assets. These include the processes, the policies, the procedures, and knowledge repositories within that organization or within the environment that the project is taking place. Also, we'll be looking at organizational systems, all right, and this includes the governance framework, that is the leadership and management of that project. That's what we call the governance frameworks, the management elements, all right, and the organizational structure type. Okay, next we'll be looking at the interaction and influence, all right, how organizational process assets and the enterprise environmental factors influence your project. We'll also be looking at case studies and also several examples, and then we'll also see how these factors are applied in real projects. And then of course, you know that at the end you have a quiz and a knowledge check. Okay, so let's move right into module 2, week 2 in our project management professional program. All right, so now let's take a dive into the enterprise environmental factors, EEFs. Oh, fantastic. In this section we'll be looking at the EEFs and how they shape the context in which our project operates. So let's go, guys. Let's go, guys. Now, what are enterprise environmental factors, you may be wondering? These are external or internal conditions that influence project management decisions, strategies, and outcomes. So as a project manager, you have to understand that, hey, whatever project you are doing in whatever organization, all right, whether public or private organization, there are factors, conditions, both within the organization and outside the organization, that will definitely impact on the way you make your decisions, how you formulate your strategies, and the eventual outcome of your project. All right, so EEFs are elements that project managers and teams have little or no control over, but they significantly impact the project success. All right, so your control over the EEFs will depend on quite a number of factors, which we are going to be looking at later on. All right, and one of them is of course the structure of the organization in which you're operating. Okay, so moving on. So what are those internal factors? Let's look at those internal factors. These are factors originating within the organization. All right, examples of internal factors, all right, within the organization include the organizational culture and the structure. All right, when you talk about organizational culture, you talk about the norms, the values, the way things are done, all right, the belief system, okay, in the organization. All right, and then when you talk about the structure, depends on the type of the type that the organization is operating with, whether functional or projectized. We're going to look at that in detail much later. All right. So also we have resource availability and allocation. This is also another factor originating within the environment. The resources that are available to you in terms of human resources, all right, material resources, financial resources, information resources. So these are factors originating within the environment or within the organization that can actually impact your project. All right. And then also another example of factors within the organization are existing policies. Every organization have policies and procedures. All right. So these are also going to impact on your project. So let's look at factors that are external to the organization, that is factors outside of the organization that you're operating. All right. So these are factors that are outside of your control, okay, and the organization's control. The internal EEFs, to some extent you could have control over them, all right, of course depending on the structure of the organization in which you're operating. But the external EEFs, you have no control over them, and this includes market conditions and competition, all right, economic trends and inflation rates, okay, and then legal and regulatory requirements. You as a project manager and even the project organization that you find yourself have no control over these factors. They are within the macro environment, okay, so there's almost nothing you can do about them apart from just adjusting yourself, adjusting your systems, adjusting your strategies to align with these factors. Okay, so let's move on now. Let's move on. So what are the key takeaways from here? Enterprise environmental factors are influential elements that impact project management, so you have to understand that, right? And then also internal EEFs stem from within the organization, while external EEFs come from the external environment. Okay, so understanding and adapting the EEFs is crucial for successful project planning and execution. Okay, so like I said, most of the factors, whether internal or external, that have influence on your project, you may not be able to have control over them. The only thing that you can do is to understand them and adapt your methodology or your strategy to them, okay, so that you can have a successful project. All right, so congratulations, you are done with the overview. You've gained insights with the EEFs and how they shape your project environment. Okay, so in the next section we'll be looking at organizational process assets and their role in influencing project management practices. Keep up the great work and let's continue our journey towards mastering project management. Okay, so let's move on to section 3, organizational process assets. Now let's look at the organizational process assets and how they contribute to project management practices and successful project outcomes. Now, what are organizational process assets, or OPAs for short? These are internal resources and knowledge that influence how projects are executed. Okay, so you have a pool of knowledge and resources that will definitely influence how your project is being executed, and these consist of processes, policies, procedures, and knowledge repositories developed and accumulated by the organization over time. So within the organization, you have projects that have been carried out in times past, all right, and then the outcomes of these projects are documented. The lessons learned are documented, changes made are documented. Do you understand? So all these things now form a knowledge repositories, all right, for future projects. The processes that were adopted, the strategies that were adopted, the policies, the procedures that they followed. So all these things at the end of the day now form a knowledge base from which you can draw and impute in your project. Okay. So let's see the processes that are involved in the organizational process asset. These are standardized approaches to performing activities within the project. All right. Examples include project selection methods, how you select your project, change control procedures, in other words, how changes are being implemented in the project, risk management processes. So like we've said before, in every project you have risks, all right? So how you manage your risk to ensure that it does not impede your project will vary from project to project. Okay, so moving on, policies. These are another factor when we talk about organizational process assets. Policies are high-level guidelines that influence decision making. So as a project manager, you do not take decisions arbitrarily, all right? You have to follow the policies of the organization, all right, when you are making your decisions, all right? Policies that will help to fuel your decisions, and those policies are out there. So you have to find the ones that are relevant to both your organization and the project that you are carrying out. Now, examples include quality assurance policies, ethical standards for project conduct. So these are policies that you have to ensure that you are conversant with in making your decision, so that you don't make the wrong decisions. Now, there are more examples in the PM book which you have in your possession. So I urge you to visit the PM book so that you can see more of these examples regarding the processes and even the policies. Okay, so moving on, let's look at the procedures in organizational process assets. Now, procedures are step-by-step instructions for performing specific tasks. Okay, so for every task that you have to perform within your project or the execution of your project, you have instructions. So you have to understand the procedures for the task. All right. Examples include procurement procedures, communication plan, execution step. All right. Even resource acquisition, resource allocation. All these are tasks. All right. And each of these tasks have their specific procedures which you must understand within an organization. For example, if you talk about, let's look at maybe the accounting system. All right, there is a particular step-by-step instruction for making payments, all right, collecting payments, processing payments. Do you understand? And even refunds, there are procedures, step-by-step guide for getting that done. All right, so the same way within your project, you have to understand the procedures that are there. All right, moving on, let's talk about knowledge repositories. These are also part of your organizational process assets. Now, these are centralized repositories of lessons learned, historical project data, and best practices. Okay, so for every project there must have been lessons that you have learned, okay, and then the history of your project data and the best practices, the things that have worked for your projects over time. Okay, they make up the knowledge repository for your organization. All right, examples include project archives, past project performance reports. So all these things are part of the knowledge repository. So what are the key takeaways from this section? So first and foremost, you understand that organizational process assets are internal resources that impact project management. OPAs include processes, policies, procedures, and knowledge repositories. Leveraging on OPAs enhances your project efficiency, consistency, and help to inform your decision making. Okay, so moving on, congratulations for completing this particular section. You've gained insight into the significance of organizational process assets, which we call OPA, in project management. In our next segment, we'll see how organizational systems, okay, influence project execution. Organizational systems also have impact in how you execute your project. So keep up the good work in your project management journey. Let's move on now. So now we're on to section 4, organizational system. Great job. Now let's dive into the systems of the organization and how they contribute to the project's context and its overall success. So what are organizational systems? These are systems that define how an organization operates and manages projects. So every organization have their systems, all right? These systems are a collection of components, all right? Components that interact and interrelate with one another, all right? And at the end of the day, determine how the organization operates and how it manages projects. Okay, they include governance frameworks, management elements, and organizational structure type. We're going to be looking at this in detail shortly. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about governance frameworks. These are formal structures that guide decision making, accountability, and project oversight. Okay, they are formal structures that are set up within the organization that will guide how you make your decision, all right, and how you report, all right, accountability, and also how you oversee the project throughout its life cycle. All right, examples of governance framework include project oversight boards. Okay, for every project you have what we call oversight board. That is a board, a group of people or a management team that oversees the project, right? Manage changes within the project and also approve decisions, all right, that are made in the course of the project. We also have the project management offices. Okay, for most organizations, especially large organizations involved in complex projects, have what we call PMOs, project management offices. We mentioned this earlier. Okay, so they are examples of governance framework which are also part of the organizational system. Okay, so let's look at the next factor in the organizational system, which is management elements. Okay, now these are key components that enable effective project management. Examples include leadership commitment to projects, and then also resource management practices. Now, like I said, in the PMBOK you have more examples. All right, the PMBOK is very rich with examples, a lot of examples. So you have to ensure that while we're going through these classes, at the end of the class, all right, you have to visit your PMBOK so as to gain more insight, see more examples, and expand your exposure to what we're talking about here. Okay, so management element has to do with the management, the components, all right, that enable your project management. Okay, moving on, let's look at organizational structure types. Now, there are various structure types which will eventually impact how you manage and execute your project. Okay, we have hierarchical arrangements that define roles, responsibility, and communication pathways. Okay, examples include functional organization, matrix organization, weak, balanced, and strong. All right, when we talk about matrix organization, it could be is a combination of different types of structures, and that includes weak structure, balanced structure, and then strong structure. And then lastly, we also have projectized organization. Okay, now you may be wondering, what makes a structure weak, what makes it strong? Now, a weak organizational structure is the one that tends more towards functional. All right, functional organization. A functional organization is simply an organization that is mostly operational. Right, the work is mostly operational. Right, for example, accounting work, customer service, those are operational work. All right, and of course, in most organizations, they operate the functional structure type. So when you have an organization that you now have a project going on, okay, and the organization is mostly dominated by a functional structure, all right, we'll call it a matrix organization. All right, and if the managers, all right, or the leaders within the organization have more influence over the project than the project manager, is actually a weak matrix structure. Are you getting it now? Right? But then when you have a 50-50 influence, all right, between the project manager handling the project within that functional organization and also the other leaders, right, maybe heads of department, unit heads, coordinators, and all that. If you have a 50-50 influence over the project, then of course we'll call it a balanced matrix organization. Okay, and then on the other extreme, when you have when a project manager has more influence over the other leaders within the organization, within that functional organization, we'll call it a strong matrix organization. Do you understand that now? Right? So those are the differences. And then finally, you now have a projectized organization, whereby the organization operates in a projectized format. For example, in some construction firms like Julius Berger, like Straco, and all that. All right, event management companies. Okay, so those are more like projectized organizations. Okay, the work within such organizations are in project formats. Okay, so moving on, let's see how organizational structure type influence our projects in a tabular form. You can see this table here outlined. Up here you have the different organizational structure type. This one is the functional, and then you have the matrix. Under the matrix you have the weak matrix, you have the balanced, you have the strong matrix, and then you now have the projectized organization. Okay, now coming over this column, now you have the project characteristics. All right, how this structure influences the project. Okay, so over here you have the project manager's authority over the functional structure. It has little or none. So the project manager has very little or no authority in a functional organizational structure. Okay, but in a weak matrix his authority is low. In a balanced matrix, low to moderate. All right, more like a 50-50 influence. Okay, and then a strong matrix, moderate to high. All right, tending more towards a projectized organization. All right, and then in a projectized organization It has high to almost total authority, right? So when you talk about resource availability in a functional organization, there's little or none. Okay, the project manager has very little resource availability or even none, so he always has to source for resources, he always have to apply and all that. So he has almost little or no control over resource availability in a functional structure type. And then in a weak matrix is very low, in a balanced low to moderate, in a strong matrix moderate to high. But in a projectized organization, the project manager's control to resource availability is high to almost total. All right, he is the orga when it comes to a projectized organization. Now, who manages the project budget? In a functional organization, the functional manager does that. When we talk about the functional manager, we're talking about a manager in a functional area or a functional line. All right, maybe like the account manager, all right, or the customer service manager, okay, or the production manager. Do you understand? So any of those functional managers, okay, have they manage the budget of the project, okay, the HRO manager and all that. So in a weak matrix, the functional manager also manages the project budget. In a balanced matrix is 50-50. Okay, in a strong matrix, the project manager manages the project budget, and then in a projectized organization, the project manager is also in control of the project budget. All right, how about the project manager's role? In a functional organization is part-time. All right, so this is more or less like a project that is going on within a functional organization. Let's say, for example, you're brought in as a project manager to maybe do a facelift in an organization, maybe like a bank, for example. All right, you're being brought in to do a renovation. Okay, so you are not a full-time staff in that organization. Let's say for example, a bank. Now they want to renovate one of their branches. All right, so you're a project manager, and then you're brought in to oversee that project. You're not a full-time staff of that bank. Okay, so you're only there part-time for the purpose of that short-term project. Okay, in a weak matrix is also part-time. Your role is part-time. In a balanced matrix, yes, it could be full. In a strong matrix, full-time. And then in a projectized organization, it's also full-time. All right, so lastly, let's look at the project management administrative staff. That is the project team. Okay, in a functional organization, they are also part-time. Okay, they are part-time for the duration of that particular project. They could be sourced from in-house, all right, from within that organization, or they could be sourced from outside. You understand that now? So they are part-time as long as the project exists. So for a weak matrix, they're also part-time. For a balanced matrix, also part-time. But for a strong matrix, they are full-time. And then for projectized organization, the project management administrative staff are also full-time. Okay, so that is the organizational structure and how it influences your project in a nutshell. Okay, so let's look at the key takeaways from this section. So far, you've been able to see how organizational systems shape project management practices and outcomes. We've also looked at governance frameworks, how they guide decision making and accountability. All right, now we also know that management as elements support effective project execution. Okay, and then we've also seen the organizational structure types, all right, and how they influence the roles and communication within a project. Okay, So with that, I say congratulations. You have been able to go through this section. You've explored the role of organizational system in the project environment. In the upcoming section, we'll delve into the interaction and influence of enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets, how they influence the project. Okay, so keep up the excellent work on your project management journey. All right, so in our next class we'll be continuing this particular module from interaction and influence of EEFs and OPEs. Right, hope you've gotten a bunch of insights. I want to thank you for taking the class, and I want to urge you, as always, to ensure that at the end of the class you visit your PM book and then look through the sections we have covered to get more insights, more information. The PM book goes in depth into all these things we discuss in class. Okay, so I urge you to do that so as to broaden your knowledge and the things you're learning in this training program. Okay, so that's it for today. See you in our next class. Cheers.